Hello and welcome to Podcast with Author Marichi. Today we're in conversation with celebrated Indian novelist, playwright, children's book author, and former professor of French language and literature, Mariam Ahlawat, about her latest book, Conversations with Yourself. I'm calling this a small book with big impact. Do you want to connect to your soul? Do you want to be happy? If yes, let this book be your companion. The companion who asks you difficult questions that you may have been shying away from all your life. Questions about your faults, your fears, your prejudices. It is in answering these questions that you will be able to unravel the knots in your mind and unburden your heart of heavy feelings so that you can align your mind, body, and soul with happiness. So, tune into our podcast. Hi, Mariam Auntie. Thank you so much
Hello.
for making time
Hello.
for me. And
My pleasure.
many congratulations again on the release of your new book, Conversations
Thank
with
you.
Yourself. I had a great time reading it, and it's such a great opportunity to speak to the author herself about the thoughts that have gone into this book. So let's start off with the obvious, Mariam Auntie. What was your motivation for writing this book?
I think these are things that people think about a lot.
Uh,
There are people who talk to themselves.
yes, I'm one of
Yeah,
them.
they address themselves and they wonder what they did right or wrong or how should they should because people do have, but they don't go deep enough. And I found that a lot of people my age or even younger,
Uh-huh.
they're very lost, they in the world. Because by the
Right.
time you reach middle age, or even sometimes before that, you wonder what is your place in the world, you should be doing. And I find a lot of people running to, gurus and babas to find that, that peace, that inner peace which they want, maybe. A lot of turmoil in their hearts, unless they're very well fitted. I've said this in the book. If you're
Yes, you
very
have.
well fitted into the social system,
Right.
and you are completely convinced that what you're doing is the right thing to do. Say for men that okay, I'll take up this job and I'll become a civil servant, and if I become a civil servant, this is what I'll do, and then I'll marry, and then I'll have kids, and then my kids will do this, and those people are striving towards some certain goals which are very
Yes.
easy to define. It doesn't mean that they are terribly happy,
Right,
but
right.
they
But at least
feel
there's
that
some surety in their life.
yeah, they feel that they have some kind of stability of what that they do going the right direction. But a lot of people in urban environments, they're very very lost. There's a lot of chaos in the urban environment. And a lot of people are going. People make fun of it also. Remember those? There's some videos that goes, about going into spirituality. There are always these women going something, and then I've
Oh,
forgotten who
so,
does it. There's this. I think iDiva.
uh-huh.
iDiva is these girls who make fun of all kinds of people. So they say all the
Right.
all the South Delhi girls in the world and things like. Have you seen those? Yeah.
I think we got to find our piece where we can get it. And in this book, you're actually directing people inward to themselves. And I felt that you are urging us to find our peace within ourselves. And where we haven't really been successful in finding a lot of stability and peace. So, I mean, where do you get this conviction from?
I think it's more than finding peace. It's undoing a lot of knots which you never thought of
Right.
undoing. There are a lot of knots in our psyche, in our thought processes. We are kind of in a conundrum about things. So I think it's undoing those knots by asking yourself the questions that are there in the book.
What real life inspiration helped you realize that to find peace, we need to undo these knots?
It's not a real life realization that came, not like an epiphany or something. It's something which I observe, and being a writer, then naturally an observer of human nature, and I think being a teacher, that makes you want people to be the best version of themselves and learn things. It's exciting, to tell
Yeah.
people about things which they don't know, and which will sort of fire them up or make their lives more exciting and more fascinating.
This was going through my mind as I read through your book. It has a really compassionate tone. It's not you're making mistakes or that I know better than you or I want you to know that
No,
you are
no, not
wrong.
at all, not at all.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that you have the heart of a teacher to help people realize that they may be making mistakes, but you're saying it in a way that'd be good for them to realize.
Yes, because I mean, it's for them. The
Hmm.
book is written for themselves because I feel that anything that you carry, all these things that you carry on your heart, they're like burdens. If you have resentment, anger, or if you have prejudices, they're burdens you're carrying. That I will not talk to this person, I will not marry this person, I will not, in India, how it is, line. It's written for Indians basically, although of course the
Right.
diaspora could, yeah. But you know how we are divided along lines of caste and religion and region and language also. You'll find terrible jokes about language. I think
And
it's, yeah, I think that's kind of, something one needs to think about.
yeah, I mean, I certainly got thinking about many things, many new things
I'm
for
glad,
me.
I'm glad.
So, again, coming to the topics that you are addressing in this book, you go in like really hard. The very first chapter says knowing one's faults. And almost right at the beginning, you say that, well, don't start with self forgiveness.
Then you'll be so self-indulgent, you won't want to talk to yourself about anything.
Exactly, yes. And I felt that that was so startling right in the beginning, but also such a wake up call. Like, that's really important. That set the tone for what we are going to be doing as a collaborative project, the reader and the book.
The reader and the book, that's right. That's what it is. No, it's for nobody else.
It's not just straight reading because you're asking so many questions of the reader, like in every page, and you really delve deep. There is like a lot of emphasis on introspecting on our childhood, right?
Yes, I mean, most of psychology tells us a lot of things that we have that are making us uncomfortable today. They come from somewhere deep down where, as children, we experienced something, or we didn't get enough love, or one of these things. And it's true. Because you're constantly fighting with your past, your experiences, you're like undoing the knots, and you don't know how.
Exactly, we don't know how. That's where we get stuck. Do you also find that there is resistance to even acknowledging that there are these knots?
Of course. Somebody asks you that question. If somebody else asks you, you'll be very angry. But
Right.
if you ask yourself, that is this the problem? That this happened to me, you know, then it's easier. And like I
Yes.
said in the book, even if you're lying to yourself, at least you know you're lying.
Right, right.
That person, you will lie. You'll be uncomfortable, and that person will never know. So there's no solution. There's nothing that comes of it. Something
Yes.
should come from this interaction. If nothing comes of it, then it's not worth it.
Yes. And I did feel, again, as a reader, that if some of these questions were posed to me by another person, I might have felt somewhat cornered. But because it's in the form of a book that I can put it down when it's getting a little too much for me, then I have the space to think it over and then revisit once I'm
Yeah,
better
like
prepared.
for example, this do manipulate people. There's in that. So I mean, when people manipulate others, they sort of know. They use their biases, they use their own personal charm to manipulate others. They know that they do. But when it's down in front of you, you can sort of, maybe smile and say, yes, I do. And nobody knows about it. But then
Yeah.
you have to also ask yourself, that is something that I really like to do. If you don't ask yourself this question, you'll never ask yourself whether you really like doing it. You think that it's something if you have a conscience, which is a good thing that you do or not.
Yeah, I think that would be really helpful to shake things up for ourselves and think that is what I'm doing actually efficient? Is it serving me as well as I think it is? Or,
Maybe it is serving you very well. But is that what you want to be? We have this
yeah.
ideal which we want to
Hmm.
present to the world, but we
Hmm.
also have our own selves. We sort of say, I'm this person. Everybody says to them, so this is me. So in that framework of this is me, does this fit in? this is what I want to be. They don't know themselves. They just have an ideal. And that ideal can be actually even based upon a film star or their parents, or their
Exactly, onto
parents. They have
themselves.
role models and then they will, yes, I'm like this. Sometimes if you
Right.
notice, you see a movie in which you're very involved and you find that sometimes, you're even when you're older, the expressions that you make are something like the people you've been
Oh,
watching on.
yes.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, in fact, my very first podcast was on a Chinese drama, and I realized that I had subconsciously started thinking that I was a lot like this protagonist. And then I got this reality check when I was in situations where I wasn't able to respond in the same ideal manner as the protagonist did, that I realized, well, we are not what we admire. We can only strive to be what we admire.
Yeah, but that also it helps you because, like, tales and stories and everything, they were meant to give you a guideline about your life, and even fairy tales. They guide you along a certain path, and there's also a kind of morality which is there, which is a hidden morality in fairy tales also. And so, like, if you've read, there's some interesting things like transactional analysis. Have you read
Hmm.
TA? Eric
That I
Byrne?
have not.
Uh-huh. And, yeah?
What exactly is it in like a few?
No, that everything is there inside you, the parent, adult, child, and that the transactions between. But it also says in other philosophers and how you choose your life's path according to the stories you have heard. And that's why stories are so important because you become a protagonist. You model yourself after those people.
Right.
It's a study of psychology very strongly advocated and by
Mm.
even I think sociologists and psychologists and yeah. Um,
Lord, thank you for sharing that. And so this is asking some really unexpected questions which people
like
don't
what?
usually ask. Like, are your prejudices your facts? To even question that, are you prejudiced?
You have to ask yourself because people don't ask. Prejudices are just normal for them. People have these biases about boys and girls. Just for
Ah,
example, so you have boys are always supposed to be naughty. And most of the teachers are women. So they can identify with the little girls, but they can't identify with the boys. You know?
yeah. These are things that we don't really think about on the
But
daily,
if you're a school teacher, you should think about it. Yeah.
that.
In India, we have a especially strong bias in these
Hmm.
matters.
Right. Yes. The other thing that I found really interesting here are these illustrations that you put in, and
Yeah,
these are hand-drawn. You made these.
I do these kind of.
Not only does it make the book visually easier to look at, but it also does lighten the load of what you're reading.
Yes,
You know.
because you shouldn't take yourself that seriously. That's what it means. That these illustrations they show that okay, these things are there, but at the same time, there's a lighter side to these things, which you should look at. The ones with the hats, and they're all exactly alike, and they're so contented. This fellow's so different, and he's got a different nose, and he's got this flower in his hair, and this. So obviously, he's
Oh,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
here
these
it is.
guys, yeah, yeah. They think they're very superior, and this poor fellow, he's like so different. After all, we're all little people, you
That
know.
is true.
Yeah,
We're all little people.
struggling with our lives, and we're cute little people even if we do make mistakes you know
Yeah, and we're putting on our little performances for our own amusement.
right, and to fit in with the world and to be accepted and to be loved and to feel secure. So basically all of us are going through a hard time, everyone. Yeah,
And here's this little book to help ease the way
yeah,
by help
because
big
there are things that you
revelations
don't
about
need to
ourselves.
have, you don't require them, like
Hmm.
hatred and resentment and prejudices. You really don't
Hmm.
need them to be happy. In fact, you'd be much happier if you didn't have them.
With all these knots and burdens, this is kind of what we feel like internally.
Yes. Isn't poor thing?
Yes. Also, the strict compassion, where you're telling the readers, well, don't forgive yourself just yet. First, do a deep dive into yourself, understand yourself.
Yeah, meaning that don't be guilty about these things, but do uh, acknowledge them. If you acknowledge them, and you don't feel terribly guilty. And if there's anything you need to change, and if you need to forgive, and you need, to ask forgiveness, then you know it. If you talk to yourself for some time, I mean, you don't have to do it right away. That, oh, I did wrong. You can do it right away if you're doing that something now that you know. People who they don't feel this social guilt, they don't have. If you have, you need to have some amount of guilt. They think
Yes.
we are not responsible. And in
Mm.
our society, there's this whole thing of karma. So
Hmm.
they'll say, oh, it is their karma.
But never
That is
our
it.
karma.
Yeah, so you have to make your karma.
Yes,
Well, if you
absolutely.
believe in it, then you have to make
Hmm.
your karma. And actually, the religions that abound in our country, in this
Hmm.
part of the world, all of them speak of compassion. Very openly, Christianity and Islam and all that, but even in Hinduism, there's Daridra Narayan, which is like you have to have compassion for those who don't have as much as you do, or who
Hmm.
are so that if you don't have that compassion, it should make you feel a little bit guilty. If you shoo away poor children, who are treat them like dogs, people do that. Even sometimes, for example, like these days I have a lot of cats around me, as maybe you
Right.
know. And
Yes.
yeah, so there are people who are very, they do a lot of, okay, we'll feed the dog on such and such day and we'll do this
Hmm.
puja and we do. But they shoo away the cats and they think I'm really weird because I feed the cats and I get their kittens adopted, or I'm looking after the dog, poor dog, he's got something, a very sweet dog living down our lane. So I think there are a lot of people who do it because they love animals. There are other people who just will say, Arey, aap to different hai. Like, why do we are different?
I
It's
mean, you've certainly got to be different to have a cat as a conversation partner.
if the other one were here, I would show you. Yeah. He used to
Yeah.
talk a lot, yeah. He used to even talk to the TV if there was a problem. Yeah.
So you're talking about guilt, and especially social guilt is going to work in a healthy way, or is going to work at all, only if we are doing self-introspection, not just in isolation, but also through social interactions, right?
Yes, you can't do introspection in isolation because you're a social being. You have to sound it off against what you already know, and what you have read or learnt. But a lot of it is just taught in your home. You know how you just learn things by default by looking at what your parents are doing or what your community is doing, and you just imbibe it and you never think about it. And a lot of people don't think at all. In fact, they think हमें ये करना है, अभी this is important. But they don't think that why is it important? What is it that I'm thinking about? So if there's something that sort of helps you to think, I'm not really talking about intellectual or not because they think, but they also have a lot of problems, prejudices.
Yes.
A lot of prejudices they'll have. So unfortunately.
Yeah. The point that you just mentioned, that they don't see a reason to think, and you mentioned also that through this book, you want to encourage people to become their best selves, because when you're your best self or your favorite self, that is when you are the happiest,
That's what,
right?
exactly. I mean, I want that people should be encouraged to be happy by letting go of all those things which are making them unhappy. And I
Mm,
seriously believe that when
mm,
you have prejudices, and you can see it on people's faces. Nahi
mm,
bhai, hum to ye nahi karte types.
mm, mm. Yes, yes.
Yeah, it sort of alters your very expression when you have prejudice. And you can take that out.
Yeah, and you put this in your book as well, that it actually spoils your looks. You.
I believe that. And
Yeah.
I think everyone believes it. Don't
Hmm.
they say कि no, it comes on your face, whatever you're thinking, whatever, ultimately after some time, it just shows on your face that you're a person who's thinking unpleasant thoughts or whatever. It just appears on unless you're Dorian Gray, of course.
So Dorian Gray also met a tragic end ultimately.
He had to become himself.
Yeah, and that's tough for many people, right? It's very tough becoming oneself, which is why I'm so glad for this little book, because that's like your little companion helping you along. So it doesn't happen suddenly like somebody's revealed these not very nice things about you, but you can pace it yourself.
Like a companion book, right? You can read.
Yes. Yes.
I would like it to help people. I would really like it. And you know what will happen if people stop being angry and prejudiced and resentful? Everyone around them will be happy also.
That is true.
Isn't it? Yeah, everyone around. But at the same time, you can't live in a situation. I mean, this is outside the scope of the book. But you can't really live in a situation where somebody else is controlling you and somebody else is telling you what to do, and then you're expected to be happy and continually forgive that person. No, you have to find a way out. But that's another kind of knot. That's
Right.
those are other different kinds of knots, and there are social knots, and there are a lot of these issues which are related to our to the way our society functions.
Yes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so those are different. But this book is for people who are already maybe thinking for themselves and
Mhm.
they have some control over. I think I've said it in one part. They have some control over their lives. At that point of time, you are, I can't expect housewives with bullying husbands and mothers-in-law to read this and say that I will not be unhappy. I mean, they can try. They may not be as, I mean, I can't expect that they would not be unhappy. Obviously, they'll be unhappy and they will be angry.
Yes, you have mentioned that there are many social burdens that we carry, social obstacles to happiness. But what's in our hand is our own agency. We need to strengthen that. Let's not become a burden to ourselves.
So these are things which are outside of
Mm.
the kind of social oppression you might be experiencing, or that the kind of things that society imposes upon you. Although you can
Yeah.
reject them also and put yourself in another maybe slightly difficult situation. But basically, it's about control, about self-control.
Self-control, yes. So there is this phrase that I've been using of late. I've been telling my friends, hey, let's not haunt ourselves. You know, like
Okay,
even, yeah, because
that's a good
life is
thing.
tough, but we often haunt ourselves with our own anxieties and overthinking and these knots that you're talking about, the unnecessary anger, resentment, and competitiveness. I felt that this book is saying the same thing. I mean, not using these words, don't haunt yourself, but it's actually moving us in that direction.
One thing was that is that like understanding your own agency and your ability to change your own life. Your own inner life. You have the ability. You don't have to go to a guru or a baba, one of these people. Or even if you are going to them, then first you talk to yourself,
I
and then
mean, do
after
that
that,
self-work.
yeah, you can go and then get whatever you want. But you should know what you want. How will you know what you want unless you ask yourself?
You got to have the confidence that I'm going to do this for myself.
Just for myself, and I'm also important. My opinion is important. My opinion about myself is important. What I think. It's like,
Yeah, I feel like the book really nicely balances out the I, like you were saying that, yeah, I am important. At the same time, there is so much emphasis on our behavior toward others, our consideration toward others. And there's this one example that I really liked in this book. You say we should wish people in their own greetings.
if you don't, why not? Because I've lived a life and met all kinds of different kinds of people from different parts of India, and I always think that it's something which brings you closer to a person if you use their greeting instead of your own.
Right, yes.
And then they
Hmm.
will wish you back also, and they'll feel happy. So if you really want to connect with them, you should maybe learn a bit of their language and talk to them, a few words, few sentences, and
Yeah.
then you can connect with. That is if you want to connect with them.
Hmm. I mean, it's a thought, right? If nobody plants a thought in our mind, then we may just never think about it. So when I read this, I started thinking, well, my social circle, how many people are there who, use greetings in a different language than I do? And, so I felt like the book also is softly encouraging you widen your social circle, not just in terms of numbers, but take in more diverse people,
Okay,
And
yeah, you
yeah,
could do that when you think that they're diverse people, and yeah. Or even small things, which people think, like, I remember, I mean, I don't know if it's relevant, but I was traveling with this young woman. I had just gone to Rajasthan recently, and there was a very sweet young woman with a baby, and we were talking about a lot of things. And so suddenly, these people who come serving the drinks and the tea and coffee and dinner and all that. And I noticed that nobody was thanking them. So I told this girl, I said, she was a very young woman, maybe like about your age, maybe younger even, but she had a small baby and she must have been married early. So I
Mhm.
could see nobody's saying thank you to them. So she said, yeah, people think it's just their duty to do this. I said, but even if somebody gives you a glass of water, you thank that person. It's
Mm,
only
mm.
it's only a cultured thing to do.
Yes.
It's
Mm,
because of the differences in, we have this division of labor in our
mm,
society. And we think
mhm,
this is they are we don't have to thank them. They don't deserve a word of thanks. And then we call ourselves cultured. So these things do strike me. Like this is just a few days ago. Not a single person in the entire compartment was thanking. They would just hand them their used plates and their spoons and their trays without even looking at them at times. And I feel that's quite terrible, isn't it? What do you think?
I was just thinking that how my dad, especially, has always been very warm and compassionate to all service staff. And whenever we have them over for anything at our home, it's so common for them to say, "We really liked how Uncle treats us. He's so
That's one.
different."
They don't expect it because most people don't do that. I think it's quite terrible. Yeah. We must do this. Okay. Okay. It's for ourselves. To be the best version of yourself. Would you want to be the person who just takes somebody else's services for granted, even if they're being paid for it? Or do you
No.
want to be a person who's cultured and polite and. So that's what I mean. That's why we do all this for ourselves.
So, do you have a message for people who perhaps are not so invested in becoming cultured individuals? It may not be their,
No, I
conscious
would, and it's
motivation.
not preachy at all, even. In
Mm,
fact, all my children's books also, I don't preach. Never. Like you'll find a lot of very preachy children's writers, and you should do this. No, I just make them feel happy and fascinated with things. And the message comes, if there is a message, it'll come on its own. And if it doesn't come, too bad.
hmm. So, any tips at all for a reader to engage with this book? Like, do we need to jot down our responses to it? Do we, keep a
You
journal?
do.
To
If you
reader?
feel that it's something very important, then you can do that. But if you feel you've already spoken to yourself about these things, or that there's something that's resolved in your mind, then it's okay. But if you find something's unresolved, maybe you can think about it. It's not a book to read all at once and then forget about it. It's like
Right.
a companion. Like you said, you can keep it by your
Yes.
side and read it
Hmm.
bit by bit. Maybe today you read one question and think about it. Maybe tomorrow you'll read another. Because it's a very tiny book. And
It is.
I
Yes.
wanted it to be like that so that it wouldn't weigh heavy on a reader. And, as it is,
Hmm.
people don't read these days. They look at it and maybe think, this is something I can go through.
Yeah. What is your advice to readers who, at some points of the book, may feel a bit overwhelmed? How do they make it easier
Put it
on them?
aside, leave
Yeah.
it for another time. Like Scarlett O'Hara would always say in Gone with the Wind, I'll think about it tomorrow.
Tomorrow is another day.
Yeah. I'm not telling people what to do. I'm just asking them to just talk to themselves and see if there's anything they need to do to make their own selves happier. I don't want to preach that you should think this, you should think that. No, no, no.
Yeah, the approach of this book is that it's not giving pointers. It's only prodding you to find your own clarity, and that's something that I really
Yes,
appreciate.
I don't want to give pointers because nobody
Mhm.
can give pointers to another. Most of these things that are there in the book are basically about society and people's interactions with each other. If you look at it, how people who are, well ensconced in their social setups, people who feel different, people who've been ill treated, people who have prejudices. So there are different kinds of people in the book. It's all about people. And what kind of person you are, So when you read this book, you will know that whether in childhood you felt lonely, and that
Hmm.
loneliness is still inside you somewhere.
Right.
In that, right? So it could have been a very simple thing, like I've written in the book, that it could have been something deeper, like a rejection by a parent, which happens very often. Or it could be something as simple as that you move to a place where you don't speak the language and all the kids in your class are speaking another language. And naturally, you feel very lonely and left out. And that loneliness will be lingering with you.
Right.
in your adult years. And then if you talk to yourself about it, then maybe you'll realize that, oh, it was just this, nothing very much. And if it is something deeper, then again you can talk to yourself about it and try to resolve it for yourself. Because when you acknowledge things and when you bring them to the in front of you, on the table, then you can look at them more dispassionately.
Yeah, and to do this, we also need space, time, and quietude, right? And I like this part when you mentioned, do you listen to music at all? Although these days the radio is barely coming because of all the ads. That's actually the reason I stopped listening to the
Yeah.
radio, because there were way too many ads. It was so jarring. And then you're encouraging the reader to just think why you're not being able to do it, like you're hunched up over your computer and the noise in the office isn't letting you work, or you're caught in traffic for 2 hours while driving home. So know that the world is not made in a way that is conducive to this kind of deep thinking.
The way you're feeling, your feelings inside you, or maybe negative feelings, are not necessarily related to something that actually happened. They could be entirely because of your situation, or because you were sitting hunched up over your computer, that you're feeling negatively towards somebody else. There's nothing. Maybe your blood pressure's high. Maybe you've not eaten enough. Maybe you've got low blood pressure. Maybe you have the high sugar. Maybe you have low sugar. And then you think it's everybody's fault. The world is a terrible place. Well, actually, it's your body you need to address first. Because there's this
Yeah.
chapter on mind, body, and soul.
Yes.
And there's this whole thing about that people tell you that only the soul is important and the body is something, which is of a lower category. But what I've said in this book is your body is very important because, see, if you believe in the soul, it's the body that houses the soul. Because the
Absolutely.
body is
Yeah.
a very important entity, and your mind, I say your mind is something which leads you astray because it can believe this or the other. All right, but the mind is where creativity lies. All this doesn't lie in your soul and your body. I mean, maybe partly, but mostly it lies in your mind, your creativity, your mind and your body. And that's how people create great things from sculpture to science to,
Mm-hmm.
But when you go to gurus and all, they'll tell you that, only the soul is important. That's what I'm saying here, that no. And especially when you're young, your body and your mind are extremely important and need to be nourished and taken care of and driven in the right direction. Oh,
Yeah. I feel this respect for our body and our mind, and by extension the respect for who we are, like our
exactly.
soul,
Yeah.
if we want, that would also then make us more responsible towards the environment and socially responsible. I'm sitting here and I can hear firecrackers outside, and we are in Delhi and the air quality is really killing right now.
Yes, and you
So
wonder why people are doing this, right?
yeah, I feel that if everybody were, oriented towards respecting their bodies, minds, and spirits, then,
Maybe, yeah.
these things
That's the
would
way of
not
looking at it. Yeah.
like
Right.
we'd be
Yeah.
more conscious about what we are putting into our environment, and we wouldn't make it so noisy and so disruptive.
And then create so much pollution that is harming our children and,
And
general
harming us.
health, general health of people. But people
Yeah.
always think more about their children, right? If they have children, they'll think that, oh no, this is really bad for our children because they become more important because they've got to survive you into the future. And so you don't even think about them. Yeah.
And then there's also this feeling of collective helplessness in the face of environmental or social disruptions. But it all comes down again to every person working on themselves.
You have to see what your priorities are and you have to do what you have to do.
Actually, another way of looking at this book is that it's helping revitalize the soul, revitalize
Yeah,
our
that's
spirit.
what the soul, according to me,
Mm.
cannot be reached because you have to reach it through the body and the mind. Don't you think that it's the body and the mind that actually can understand the world? You can feel the heat, the cold, and see the beauty of the world through your eyes. And how do you experience the world? Through your body. How do you understand
Yes.
the world? Through your mind. If you didn't have a mind, how would you understand the world? How would you experience the world without the body? So they're both important for the soul. Then
Yes.
later on comes the soul.
Mm.
So I think
Mm.
it's important. That's why I've written it. That you should not discard the importance of the body and the mind in reaching
Yeah.
the soul.
But I certainly hope that our listeners feel encouraged to take care of all three, their mind, body, and soul. So, Mariam Auntie, I want to end with some extracts from the book,
Okay,
right?
what did you like? What would you like to read?
I liked all of it. And I keep going back to the illustrations because these visual cues give us a very clear idea of where we want to go. So, like, we had the sketch of this lady who was looking very fearful and burdened. And at the end of the book, we have these three happy levitating children, like characters.
They're not supposed to be children actually, but yes. They look like children. They are actually people, just people, who have learned to levitate and feel happy.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like they have this childlike joy.
Yes, they do, because they finally got rid of all the burdens, you see, of anger and resentment and unforgiveness and prejudice. They got rid of all their burdens, so they become childlike.
Yeah, it frees the inner child, and I think that is something that we all want. It says here that it is easy to tell an untruth to yourself, and yet you will know it's an untruth. So this is a really interesting perspective that it's okay to lie to yourself as long as you know.
You know that you're lying to yourself. In right.
Yeah. On the one hand, we are going into the self. On the other, taking a step away from ourselves and watching the performance that we are putting on. Like we are the audience and the
That's the
actor.
only way you can go into yourself. If
Yes.
you this I've written somewhere that it's a kind of an introspection in which you have distanced yourself from yourself.
And it says, as you keep talking to yourself, many aspects of your life will emerge.
Once you talk to yourself, you treat yourself as a person, or maybe another person, because yes, it's kind of an externalized introspection.
Right.
And then there'll be aspects of yourself that you look at from a distance and say, oh yeah, I'm like this, or this person who's me is like this.
The actor and the viewer being both at once. Mariam Auntie, there are some parts of your book that really resonated with me because I was relating them to real life conversations I've had, real life interactions. So I just want to talk about a few of them and you tell.
I would be interested in knowing that, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you've written that almost everyone has prejudices, though the more sophisticated may not express them openly. The
Right.
less, the less cultured, on the other hand, will voice their prejudices aloud and stand by them with great conviction. Right? So there have been instances where I'm in conversation with somebody who is airing these really terrible prejudices, and I used to wonder why are they taking my silence as encouragement or agreement and not as me feeling quite cringe, you know?
No, because they're so convinced that they're right about these things. They don't understand that they're conditioned to believe certain things. But I've also said that prejudices often stem from fear.
Yes, yes.
Fear of the other person, fear of what is different. Instead of accepting differences, people reject differences. There's a Swami Muktanand.
Okay.
I don't know whether he's still alive,
Mm-hmm.
but he said that wherever you look, why do you see differences? Instead of seeing people who are similar to you, you always look at the differences. It's a kind of a primeval fear, I feel, that as human beings, we are like, like another species and something's different. It's something to be afraid of.
Right.
And everyone wants power, like I've written in the book. If somebody is different from you, they may be more powerful than you. They may overpower you. So
Or
you
more
want to
powerful.
overpower them.
Yes.
It's rather that you would overpower them.
Hmm.
That's one basic feeling which nobody acknowledges actually.
And what's interesting is that I have frequently noticed that whatever prejudices we may have, and if we are speaking them out loud, these are usually things that are inherent in us as well. It's almost like you
Could
are
be.
taking the attention away from your own shortcomings to somebody else's.
I mean, there are lots of people who don't think at all, and I think this book would do them a lot of good.
Yes, I think so too. But as you said earlier, that you are not preaching, you are only telling them a story in a sense. So if they get the message, that's great. But if they don't, that's really too bad.
Too. That's fine too. Because it's a very uphill task. I mean, I'm no preacher, I'm no priest, I'm just a person who's noticed some things. And I think people would be happier if they dealt with those things within them. And others also would be happier.
Yes,
You know,
certainly. And those of us who have to
yeah,
be their conversation partners or unwitting listeners, silent listeners, we would certainly be happier.
people would be happier if people didn't.
Yeah.
They weren't so critical unnecessarily, or they didn't have these prejudices or these biases towards people.
And if they had more self-awareness to realize that the same shortcomings exist in them, so they can be
Yeah,
kinder about them.
they can be kinder, yeah. And kindness is important, because that's why there's so much stress. Because people are kind. They don't want to be kind. They think kindness is a weakness instead of a strength. That's what's happened in, I think, today's world more than anything. Because earlier, kind people were looked up to and they said, they're so kind. But now it's not. They worship power more than anything.
Coming back to this point about us being critical of those traits in people that are actually
So I have not thought about it in that way, but what you're saying is correct. It's very possible.
perhaps the reason why I noticed this is because there is this, I call it a saying or an adage, but it's nothing ancient. It was actually said by a senior in my philosophy class more than a decade ago. And I've made a note of it. I frequently post about it.
What is it? Just
He
give me a
said that whatever it is that we despise in others are tendencies that we are trying very hard to keep dormant in ourselves. So when we
Yes,
see
it's also possible.
yeah. So when we see another person acting out these negative tendencies and traits, then we are thinking, well, I'm trying very hard not to be a bad person, so why can't you make that effort
Why
too?
can't you make that effort? Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
And another one of the tough questions that you asked in this book, it says, have you ever rejoiced at the misfortunes or failures of your competitors, or maybe even your
Yeah,
friends?
I mean, people do realize this. I think this is something people know, and it's even in a film that I saw. It was a Hindi film. I Three Idiots or something. जब दूसरे that fellow says that जब अपने दोस्त बहुत अच्छा कर और तकलीफ.
Or the oh yes.
You remember? Yeah. So you do somewhere or the other. A lot of friendships are based on competition, and they say it's healthy. No, I feel that if you're friends with the person, you value what that person is offering. Like I have friends who are artists, some are designers, some are editors, and I really appreciate that. I'm none of those things. I'm a writer, I'm a storyteller, but I'm none of those things. But I really love the fact that they are doing these different things. So there's no question of competition. So I think that we should appreciate what is good in other people, unless we want to compete with them and we want to be exactly like that. Maybe if I were a designer and artist, I might be competing, but so far it hasn't happened. Yeah.
I think to be able to appreciate another's success, another's accomplishments, it's really important to be a secure person oneself, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why maybe these questions in the book will make you secure. Because if you talk to yourself, then that's what it says, that you deserve to be happy. It says in some places.
Yes.
Dance a jig, be happy. Because you deserve it. Why should you not deserve it? So whatever you are, whoever you are, you have a right to be happy without hurting other people. Of course, I don't say
I
that, but
like the word that you've used in your book. It's healing. You said that if you resolve whatever knots are in your heart and mind based on how you're answering these questions, it will be healing for you. I really like that.
it is healing. You see, forgiveness is healing, and like if you have a wound somewhere inside, you want it to heal, then you have to bring it outside. If it's festering inside you, it'll never heal. And there are ways and ways of bringing it out. Some people may talk to other people, they may go to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a guru, or whatever. But what I'm suggesting is that you talk to yourself about it because you know yourself best.
Yes.
Yeah, so you know that it's just something you need to unknot, like I said.
And a couple of times you're asking the reader to make a list of things that are bothering them. It says here that some consider even friendly teasing an insult. If you were teased as a child in a friendly way, then you can take social teasing more likely.
Right.
And then ask yourself, do I take myself too seriously? Do I feel I'm too good for others? Am I afraid people will make fun of me? And is it because I feel I'm not good enough already?
So these things, like they're two sides of the same coin in a way. You take offense very quickly. You think that they have no right to talk to me like that. But if you'd been a secure person, you could have laughed it off.
Yes, you could have been sporty. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not their fault basically if they're not secure. Somewhere it lies in the past. If you deal with it, then maybe, somewhere you'll be able to restore that balance of
Yes.
security. Because normally we say, oh, it's too touchy. And they use the word sensitive very negatively in India, no? बहुत sensitive है. अब इतना sensitive मत होइए, no? So it's basically that people feel that if you react, it's wrong to react. It's not. There's something we should react
Yes,
about.
absolutely.
It. But is this entire laissez-faire attitude that people have in India, which is I think it's not correct because you need to react to certain things.
Yes, absolutely. It's just if there's good-hearted ribbing going on, not to take that in a negative.
Seen other people, get very upset by ribbing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I am one person who could take ribbing very well because I've been teased a lot as a child. So I remember when I used to work with a company, the moment I had to walk in, some of the guys would say, "Oh, everything about Mariam ji grew up, but look at her shoes. Her feet didn't grow up." Things like that. And there was a lady, she'd say, "How can you bear it?" The comments they, I think they're doing it good naturedly, It's laughing. They're just, they're being affectionate. There's no harm in it. And then I'm still friends with those people.
But yeah.
So there's a very fine line between bullying and teasing. And that sometimes families also don't understand. They think it's teasing, but it goes to the point of bullying.
Oh,
Happens, yeah. If it's happened to somebody or it's happening in your family, it's good to understand that these things exist.
like what you said, that it's not people's fault if they're insecure. I feel the only fault, if we may call it so, is that they are not working on loving themselves.
Yeah, they don't know how to love themselves. But in order to even love yourself, you have to take yourself seriously enough to criticize yourself.
Yes.
Because only when you love yourself, you want to become a better version of yourself. Yeah, and a person who's very secure in the version they are and yet they're unhappy about 100 things, it means they really don't love themselves enough. They don't value themselves. To value yourself as an individual, if you want to change.
Then,
I've
yes.
written this with a lot of hope
Um,
that maybe it'll make people happier. It's nice if people are happy, right?
I mean, it certainly makes for a more breathable environment, breathable social environment.
And not
Yes.
simply laughing and joking that is happiness.
I think it's a strong optimism based on, well, actual courage, because you can't laugh off all your problems, but you can be strong and be determined that I'm going to go through it and I'll come out just fine.
Yes, absolutely. That's a Buddhist philosophy, I know that.
Well, okay, so my philosophy, it served me well. Okay, we're coming to the end of our talk, and so I want to take us to the end of this book. And I said previously that you start off by saying that don't start off with self-forgiveness, okay? Not yet. First, be
Yeah,
strict with yourself, and then towards the end, you say that don't be too harsh on yourself. Don't judge yourself as if you will always remain in the place where you are today,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
you encourage the reader to think of themselves as an open, flexible person who will bloom and change for the better, meaning become a
Absolutely.
happier person with fewer burdens to carry. I felt this pacing was so good.
And I'm glad you did. Yeah. Being an editor, I think this is kind of something which is good. I
In
mean,
these like 85 odd pages, we've already taken such a long journey, such a transformative journey. Where you don't need a lot of words to nudge you towards becoming your best self. You just need a few well-placed words.
if you write a very long book about something like this, I don't know who's going to read it. But this is something I wanted it to be like that. So I told my publisher I want it to be very small. I want it to be, the 200 words per page so that it's readable and spacing, and then I made the illustrations because they sort of lighten. It's a very heavy book actually, even though it's very small.
Yes.
It's very dense. It has a lot of stuff in it. So the illustrations make it. I wanted to say, don't take it too seriously. Don't make
Yes.
yourself unhappy over it.
Yeah.
All the time I say, that don't take it to heart, but
Yeah.
work on it. That's all. Work on it by yourself. I mean, I'm nobody to tell you how to go about it. All I can do is say that, okay, these are the things. What are the things you want? You have to say. How much power do you want? How much love do you want? What did you miss out on?
Right.
What will make you happy? Are needs the same as desires in your case?
Oh,
Sometimes needs and desires are the same.
that was an interesting section in the book, Needs and
It has a
Desires.
religious and moral background, you see, because we're taught to want little, and be minimalistic. But nobody is like that, especially when they're young. So
Hmm.
yeah, if you can separate the two things, because people suffer because they don't have things which they
Right.
want.
Right. Yes, like don't haunt yourself, don't create suffering for yourself. There are enough problems going on externally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I talked about fears, but I've also said that the human spirit is very strong. You'll see in times of, great distress, the human spirit is indomitable. But
Yes.
these little things that, niggling fears
Oh,
that keep you unhappy throughout a time when you don't need to be.
absolutely.
Or you're in a situation of a flood or a landslide.
Right.
You see
Right.
how strong people are, how
Hmm.
they help each other. Even during COVID, you saw,
Yes.
how people were helping each other.
Hmm.
But that's the time when the human spirit is really, really strong. But you don't need to make yourself unhappy in day-to-day affairs by these small things which are unimportant. Basically, the things that we are dealing with are not important.
It's the importance that we give to them, right? We
Right,
accord them
exactly.
importance, so they become big irritants for us.
You're walking about with all those things on your head and your shoulders. No, you cannot.
Right. If I had to summarize your book in just a few words, I would say that this book is not telling you that you are good, okay? That's not what it's saying, but it's helping you ask yourself, how good am I and how much more good can I be?
Good has a lot of value judgment. Right. What is good? I mean, so we can end on that. That
Hmm.
we don't know what good is, but happiness is good, right?
To me, what is good is whatever's making me feel happy and happy to be alive. No?
Happy to be alive and to live in an environment which is also happy. Because it's very painful to see people unhappy or.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Mariam
Thank
Auntie.
you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed
it's
talking to you. Always
been a
enjoy talking
real
to you.
pleasure. And I feel, again, these 85 odd pages have given way to so many more words in terms of our talks. And I hope that it will
I
give
know,
way
it's
to
lovely
many
talking.
more words in people's thoughts as they are reading it.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye bye. Thank you, Shadiko.